Hello and welcome to this episode of Live with Lizzie, powered by the China Project. Joining me today is Mr. James Zimmerman, a partner in the Beijing office of Perkins Coie LLP. Previously, Jim was elected to 4 terms as chairman of the American Chamber of Commerce in China. Jim is an active member in the foreign business community in Beijing. Thank you so much, Jim, for joining me.
Pleasure to be here.
So, Jim, tell us a little more about life in China under zero COVID. You were in China for the past few years.
Yeah, it's been very difficult. It's like a roller coaster right now with things changing. Almost every day you wake up in the morning, there's something new going on. The policies within the government are confusing a lot of people. We're not sure what's going to happen next. Just weeks ago, they were, making announcements and pronouncements that zero COVID was something that we had to live with and that we needed to move forward with, the lockdowns, quarantines, and so forth, massive testing, and it was very frustrating. And then all of a sudden, within the last week, everything is changing, everything is relaxing, and the whole Chinese media seems to be, taking an approach that it's okay. It's okay to live with COVID. So, how things move forward, you're trying to second guess what the government's up to. I view that this is all driven by, economic issues, the economy. But still there's some things about zero COVID that is still, it still hasn't been changed. And that one of those things is with respect to schools. The schools are not open. Which is very frustrating for a lot of working parents. They have their kids at home and they have to find ways to continue to make sure that they're following classes online. So until they open up the schools, a lot of folks believe that there's really no relaxation of the zero COVID.
Right, as you mentioned, things are obviously changing very fast, and it's really hard to keep up with the latest policies. We do see that there seems to be this U-turn in terms of policy direction, and COVID cases are surging. So, we all know there had been multiple protests emerging in multiple cities in China. Did those protests play a role in sort of forcing central government's hand in turning its COVID policy in a new direction? What do you think is the real driver of all those changes?
Well, I do think the protest was something that was a wake-up call for the leadership. They saw this as a threat to, party policy. They saw it as a threat to party legitimacy. Having said that, they were not going to change policy just because of the protest. They were not going to react to what the protesters are doing and say, okay, you're right. They're just not going to do that. They're never going to admit that the policies were wrong. In fact, the protesters, the protests in general were met with a very heavy hand. And there's still a lot of repercussions for a number of the protesters and those media, foreign media, representatives and journalists that attended the protests. And, so it's been kind of frustrating in how the government has reacted to the protests. But it's not, the protests alone, or it's not the reason why the government is relaxing zero COVID. It really is an economic issue. Across the board, the economy is not doing very well, anywhere from the exports to imports, to consumer spending, real estate. Things are not looking up, and so they realize that they need to take action quickly. Unfortunately, this is not a great time to relax zero COVID because they still haven't really, moved forward with their vaccination, drive. They still got a lot of room for improvement with that. But to answer your question, I don't think that the protests were, the sole issue which triggered the relaxation, but it clearly was a wake-up call for the government.
Right, and many of us in the journalist community have seen multiple protesters and organizers taken away by Chinese police. Will they face consequences, as they say, 秋后算账? What do you think is Beijing's calculus here?
Well, I do think that those that were leading and leading in a sense of, pushing out information about the protests on social media or leading the protests in person, I mean, all of those people face consequences. At a minimum, they're going to be on some watch list of the, State Security Bureau, but some too, as I know, have been visited, if they haven't been detained, have actually been visited at home, received phone calls, and so there are consequences to this. But, which is unfortunate because, in some respects, the government should be listening to the people. But I think what happens when they crack down, this actually creates a whole new storyline. And then something that is just going to add to the list of grievances that people have, so that they'd be better off to let people vent, get it out of their system, and move on.
Right. So we've been talking about timetable for China to exit zero COVID for a while. People talk about the Olympic Games. People talk about the 20th Party Congress, etc., etc. What's your take on China's current timetable to fully exit its zero COVID policy, based on the situations you've seen on the ground and the information you have?
It's really a guessing game. If you asked me 2 months ago, 6 months ago, I would have had a different answer. So we have to be very, very careful about anticipating what the government's going to do. Having said that, it seems like they're relaxing on things almost every day, but until they open up the schools, until they open up international travel and domestic travel, I think that it's still going to be a situation where zero COVID is still around in some form. They've changed the name of the whole policy to like dynamic zero COVID, which whatever that means, I still think that there's going to be policies in place, that are can control as much as possible the pandemic. Having said that, we could see a complete return to lockdowns and quarantine as we've seen the last, year, if the number of illnesses and infection rates increases to the point that it's going to overwhelm the healthcare system. So to answer your question, it's anyone's guess as to what the timetable will be on whether China completely normalizes both its economy and its response to the pandemic.
Right, and China's pandemic control policy has taken a toll on the supply chain. As Wall Street Journal reported a few days ago that Apple is accelerating moving its supply chain out of China in the wake of the Foxconn factory lockdown and massive labor protests. How representative is Apple's move? Will foreign businesses move back to China after COVID?
I think first and foremost is that people are not completely decoupling out of China. We haven't seen that. What we're seeing is more strategic recalibration, reviewing their supply chains within China. And, for the sake of resilience, for the sake of ensuring revenue flows, they have to take a look at what's happening. And it's not just because of zero COVID restrictions. It's also for a lot of reasons that people are starting to be more strategic about their investments in China. Things like, not just with zero COVID, but also, with China's and Beijing's relationship with Russia is causing a lot of heartburn for, businesses, especially European companies, but also issues concerning cross-strait relations, human rights issues, and so forth. There's a whole laundry list of things, that people are taking into consideration in reviewing, strategically reviewing their investments in China. Having said that, we have not seen a huge increase in decoupling at all. I think it's more of just strategic reshoring.
I see. And finally, let's talk about your forthcoming book. I'm super interested in this one, The Peking Express, The Bandits Who Stole a Train, Stumped the West, and Broke the Republic of China. So tell us a little more about the book. What is the book about?
Well, thank you. It's a true story from 1923. It's a story of bandits, political intrigue. It's a story of heroes. It's something that took place in 1923 that people have largely forgotten. It's about China's great train robbery that took place where over 100 people, 25 foreigners, 75 Chinese, were dragged across the countryside and had to endure 37 days, of hostage negotiations. Things end very differently for a lot of people, that are caught up in this situation. So, but it is an exciting story. It's something that, it had a real interesting time during a very interesting and unique time in China. A lot of very unique characters, and so it will be coming out in both book form as well as in electronic form and in audio form on April 4th, 2023, which is actually 1 month before the 100th anniversary of the event. But thank you for asking, and I'm hoping everyone will enjoy reading the book. Happy to, share my thoughts on that further at a different time. But thank you.
Fantastic. We'll put a link to the book website so our audience can take a deeper look at some of the content that book has to offer. But what are the lessons for today from your book?
Well, there's quite a bit because, what we're seeing is that hostage diplomacy is alive and well in the world, not just in China, but other parts of the world. And this is a story about hostage diplomacy and the impact on the people that were involved in the incident. So there very much is a lot of lessons for today in U.S.-China, China-European relations. And so that's something that, is reflected in the story and reflected in the book itself.
If you enjoy our discussions here, I'm sure you would find value in our new powerful marketplace tool for investors, also called China Edge. It tracks, distills, and analyzes both Chinese language and English language materials about Chinese companies, business leaders, and government entities, and reviews the often hidden links between them. For our YouTube viewers, we are offering a limited time 50% discount. Just go to the link you see on the screen and use the code EDGE50. Also, sign up for the China Edge newsletter. It's a daily 2-minute rundown of China business news you don't want to miss. The link is right here on the screen. You can also click on the link in the video's description section to get your complimentary subscription today.